ago, a Baptist pastor was giving a youth sermon on Easter. And he's speaking to the kids, and you know, when you give a sermon to kids, you do a lot of interactive stuff because they get really bored and tired, and they just kind of stare at you like this. They forget to tell their face that they're happy. And so he was talking about Easter and the Easter story. He was talking about the resurrection, and he asked the kids, "Do you know what the resurrection is?" And a shy little girl in the back raised her hand, and he said, "Sally, can you tell us about the resurrection?" And she said, "No, but I know if you have it for more than 4 hours, you need to go to the doctor." I'm here all week. Okay. Now you know why I do that joke every other year. Okay. That's my Easter fun. Ha ha ha. That's my Easter joke. I only do it every other year because I don't want to get done with that. All right. So, you know, I love this holiday. It's one of my favorite holidays. It's amazing to me that there's some religious science centers and churches that don't really do Easter update, but I do because I think it's such a beautiful time. It's such a beautiful holiday. There's the convergence, right? This is the holiest week of the year in the Christian calendar, and it correlates right with spring. You know, life is bursting forth all around us. Here we are celebrating. We're all in our bright colors, and it feels like spring is bursting forth. And let's face it, it's all relative because we live in Southern California, and it would be different if we were in Minnesota. But we still have that feeling, right? I was walking around yesterday, and there's all the little baby bunnies outside. I'm trying to get my puppy from eating them. And the trees are bursting forth, and it feels like new life. It feels like there's so much coming forward. You know, Rainier Maria Rilke said this. He said this: "It's spring again. The earth is like a child that knows poetry by heart." I love that. I love that because no matter what, the seasons and the movement of the earth remind us that there's always renewal. When we move through these seasons, it's aligning ourselves with that understanding that it's there for us to remember our own seasons, our own ability to be renewed, to be reborn, to be refreshed. And here we are with this powerful Easter story at the same time that all around us life is rising. And so we know the story of Jesus. We've walked through it, and I remembered my first Easter Sunday. It's a big deal to be a minister at Easter, I'll tell you. If anybody saw that video I posted on Facebook last night about what it's like to be a minister on Easter week, you should check it out because it's hilarious. I was going to try and fit it in, but we're already at the longest church day of the year, so I was like, I got to cut it somewhere. So check out my Facebook. But there's a lot of stress about Easter and about how we handle this. And when I first did my first Easter talk, I sat down to put it together, and it was 25 pages long. Because I felt like I had to give an everything in the kitchen sink Easter talk, right? That covered every single aspect of the story. And the stress was so high, it felt like my hair was coming out that week. Like, because I just was so stressed about it, you know? And then I woke up and realized, you know, that there's a reason why there's so much to this story, and there's a reason why hopefully my ministerial career is going to be 20, 30 years, because if I do 20 or 30 Easter talks, then I'll get all the different components to it. I don't need to tell the whole entire story every year. And so I'm really happy about that, because now I get it. Now I get that there's one aspect, I can pull one aspect of the story out. And so that's what we're doing today. Today my talk is about breaking free. It's about breaking free. And at its core, what I want to talk about is how we create the ties that bind us. We put in place the ties that bind us. That sense of limitation, we create that so we can break past it. So our spirit can express itself and move beyond any sense of limitation that we experience or that we create. And what I love about this is that life is not going to let us stay bound. That's what we learn when we look at this story, that life is not going to let you stay bound. Life is geared towards your freedom. And it is going to align for you in a way that allows you to step forward in a new way no matter what you're experiencing, no matter what's going on in your world. There is a seed planted within you for your freedom from that. And that's what is reflected in this Easter story. That no matter what the path that you're walking, no matter what is happening, no matter what trauma, tragedy, difficulty, challenge, whatever you want to call it, whatever you're walking through, you're in the middle of it. And it's time to realize that there's a path out of it. There's a path of transcendence. There's a path of surrendering, of releasing, of rising above. And that's what this story tells us. Now, there's a lot of controversy over, did Jesus even exist? And why are we doing this? And what does this story that's, over 2,000 years old have to do with my life? But when we look at it from the metaphysical point of view, when we take a look at it from as a story, as a myth, as a teaching tool for life, when we look at it from that perspective, you start to see that it has a lot to do with our path. It has a lot to do with our story. Each of us, in some way or another, has stepped triumphantly into a new way of being. Each of us has stepped into a new chapter of our life, like we are the thing, right? Like Palm Sunday that I talked about last week, when Jesus triumphantly entered Jerusalem in the fullness of who he thought he had come here to be and who he was, right? And then by the end of the week, he had been betrayed. Each of us has been betrayed in our lives. Each of us has walked through and experienced some sense of betrayal by someone who is close to us. That's what betrayal is. Betrayal, there's a difference between persecution and betrayal. Persecution, it happens with people who don't know you. Betrayal happens from people who love you and who you love. And we've all walked through the challenge and the difficulty of pain and suffering in our own ways, and each of us has transcended it. We have an invitation to transcend it. This story is a story of life, and it's a story of our lives. And there's a lot in there for us to remember and to feed and nurture us. And so this year, the part that I decided to focus on is that betrayal. But first, let me tell you this. Joel Goldsmith, who was one of my teachers through his writings, said this about Easter. The celebration of Easter is not to commemorate an event which took place 2,000 years ago, but to reveal a principle, so that when we face a world filled with wickedness in high places, whether they be high spiritual places, high political places, or high commercial places, we can know the impotence of human scheming, of human planning, of human ambition, evil, degradation, and iniquity. We can stand fast in the faith that God itself is our power. God itself is our presence. Let's face it, that's why Jesus is so important as a spiritual figure. That's why this story has maintained its power for these many years. He came to teach us to wake up. He came to teach us to be aware. He came to teach us that what he was there to do, we were there to do also. I love that, and the way that we handle that powerful figure of Jesus is a little bit different than some churches. He never wanted to be worshipped. He wanted to be followed. He said, I am the way, the truth, the life, because he wanted us to follow him, not because he wanted us to worship him. He never said, worship me. He said, follow me. He wanted to empower us. He wanted to enliven us. He wanted to wake us up. And you know what? He's still waking us up 2,000 years later. When we look at the teachings, when we look at, and when I do my Bible reading, just so you know, I focus mostly on those words that are printed in red, right? And those are the words that he said, supposedly said. Those are the teachings. And so I follow those teachings of Jesus. When we look at those, they are relevant to our experience. They are relevant to the path of life that we're walking. Because he wanted to remind us that we aren't going alone. That the power of God is where we are. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. He kept saying that over and over and over again. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Heaven is not some place that we go after we die. Heaven is something that we create and we live in right here or right now. And it's the same thing as for hell. Hell is at hand if we create it and if we live in that sense of limitation. And so today we're breaking free. We're breaking free from any concept that betrayal in our lives holds us back. So the idea of the main betrayals from this story, there's two of them. One of them is Judas Iscariot. And Judas was the figure that was the closest disciple to him. And Jesus knew this was coming, by the way. He saw it. He called it. He's the one who said it the night before it all happened. He pointed his fingers and said, you guys are going to deny me. You're going to betray me. And everyone was like, no, we're not. And so Judas was one of them. The other one was Simon Peter. He said to Simon Peter at the Last Supper, he said, listen, you're gonna deny me. Yeah, you are. And Simon was like, no, I'm not. And he said, no, yes, you are. You are going to deny me 3 times before the rooster crows in the morning, before the cock crows. He says, you will deny me 3 times. And so then what happens is Judas gives him up in the garden. They arrest him to the Sanhedrin, who come and arrest him, take him away. And then all of the disciples are freaking out. They're trying to follow and figure out what happened to Jesus. And there's Simon Peter following behind. And one of the guards, one of the people say, hey, he's one of his followers. He's another one. And Simon Peter says, I don't know him. That's number 1. He did it again. Someone else comes to him and says, look, there's another one of his disciples, that man. Simon Peter says, no, that's not me. And the 3rd time he did it, as soon as he said no, he heard the cock crow. And he remembered. And he realized what he had done. He put his own safety. He put his own comfort. He let his fear get in his way of standing up for what he thought. And the cock crowed, and then he went into tears from that. But Judas has become the villain of all supervillains. He could have his own superhero movie, where Jesus is a superhero and Judas is the one dressed in black, right, with a black hat and a black cape. He's been villainized for all of these years, and I'm taking a different look at him, because for a couple of reasons. But he's so important to this story. And we think of betrayal as something that's just bad. It's bad. It shouldn't happen. Now, in terms of Judas, I always love to give you a little bit of information. There's not a lot of consistency in the Gospels about Judas. And I wanted to just share that, because we're open for interpretation on these things. And so there's a theologian named Elizabeth Musselman who succinctly summarized this about Judas. And she says this, that the common thread in the Judas narratives is that he betrayed Jesus, handing him over to the authorities for crucifixion. But when it comes to the details, there's not a consensus among the Gospels. For example, in Luke and John, Judas is possessed by the devil. In Luke and Mark, Judas betrays Jesus to the chief priests before they offer him any money. In Matthew, he betrays Jesus in order to make the money, the 30 pieces of silver. In John, Judas doesn't make money from the betrayal, but had been stealing from the common purse all along. So in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, Judas betrays Jesus with a kiss. In John, Judas hands him over in a passive silence. In Matthew, Judas repents and hangs himself after returning the 30 pieces of silver to the temple. In Acts, Judas uses the money to buy a field, in which he immediately falls down, or swells up, depending on how you translate the Greek, and bursting open in the middle with all of his bowels gushing out. All right, so all of that to say is, whatever happened, it wasn't good. All right, but we don't know. But what we do know is this, is that his actions put into motion the events that would lead to Jesus' arrest, crucifixion, death, and resurrection. Without that betrayal, Jesus would not have become the Christ. He would not have attained that Christ consciousness. It wouldn't have happened. Judas was the doorway through which the Christ came into being, through which the Christ was realized. It was important for him to do what he did. If he hadn't done that, Jesus would have been, if Jesus had not had that experience, Jesus would have been one of the many prophets roaming the land, speaking and probably having a great effect on the people that he spoke to, but we wouldn't know his name. We wouldn't remember him. He wouldn't be in our consciousness 2,000 years later. It only happened because he went through what he went through, and he attained that consciousness of transcendence, which is the Christ consciousness. It's important to put everything in perspective when we're walking the path of our lives. So it reminds me, and so when I was preparing for this, it reminds me of the voices of my past from my traditional Christian family members who talk about this, and who talk about how, when I first came to consciousness about spirituality and about religion, I was told that Jesus came to suffer for my sins, and I should be grateful. And I remember at the age of 6 being freaked out that Jesus knew who I was, because that was a long time ago. I remember thinking maybe it was like 5 or 6 years before that, that Jesus was there, because I was 6. I didn't know how long ago 2,000 years is. That's a long time, And so I remember being so crazy about so there's all these people who focus on the suffering piece. That Jesus came to suffer for you, and you have to be grateful for it, because now he, now you're clean now, because he did that. Wait, what? That didn't make sense to me. And so when I was contemplating it this week, what reminds me of is, it reminds me of that friend, and we've all had that friend, who has a tragic thing happen to them. They have a betrayal. Maybe it's a job that they lost suddenly that they didn't expect to lose, or a relationship that disintegrated that they didn't expect to happen, or something. And they've been through it, and they talk about it a lot, and they can't seem to get past it, right? You have a girlfriend? I know there's a couple people shaking their heads. We got girlfriends that talk, And yet, even though they are married to someone fabulous now, where they have a better job, they have a better house, whenever you're talking about anything, it comes back to the trauma of it, right? You're stuck on it. Let's look at this glorious view. Oh yeah, that bastard like that beach. I hate that. I can't believe it. Look, oh, let's have this glorious meal. Oh, that Bossamite. Oh my goodness, he used to drink wine when he had lunch. But wait, what? Hold on, And I would say things like, well, but you're so loved now. Look at this glorious partner you have that loves you and gives you and supports you, and you have everything you've ever wanted and more than you could ever imagine. Yeah, but that happened. He's bad. He's the wrong one, That there's just a way. Am I speaking to, do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, good. I just want to make sure. We all know someone like that, right? I used to be that person. I'll admit it. It used to be me about 20 years ago. But the fact is that we get stuck in the trauma of it, and we don't realize the context of where we get to. That's what we're talking about today. That there's a divine perfection in life that unfolds, and if we allow the story to carry us to that place of transcendence, we find that life wants to bring us to a better spot. It's like a flow. For me, it reminds me of floating on the ocean. The ocean's going to take me to where I need to be if I let it. But if I fight it, if I get stuck in one spot, if I'm trying to stay in one spot, all I'm going to do is struggle and suffer. We have to know that life is for us, and it wants your freedom. And the only thing that's binding us is our attachment that we tie on our hands and our feet and hold us to some negative experience. But it's time to break free from that. It's time to let go of our belief in being a victim. I firmly believe that we cannot live in victim consciousness and have faith in the divine and have a relationship with God at the same time. Those two things can't exist. Because when we have faith in God, when we know that there is a power and a presence that's alive for us, it's around us, it's guiding us, it's supporting us, it's loving us, we cannot be at effect of the world. We cannot be a victim to it. We have to realize that everything is coming together for our freedom. Ernest Holmes says that all nature rises to produce and manifest the freedom of the individual that it may unloose its own energy. God works through us to reveal the divine life. God takes us to where our freedom is, if we let it. And the problem is we don't like change. We don't like it. Don't count me out. There's a great church cartoon where the minister says, the preacher's up on front and says, who wants things to change? And everybody raises their hand. And then the second thing says, who wants to change? And nobody's raising their hand, right? We all want something to be different, but we don't want to actually have to experience a change because it's scary. It's scary to be in a place of unknowing. It's scary to be in a place of transition. It's scary to allow for things to unfold when we don't know how it's going to come forward. But we're called. We are called to live fully. We are called to live complete freedom. We are called to do that, and everything that happens in our life is going to guide us to that. Judas was part of the path of freedom for Jesus. He was probably the best disciple he had, the most willing participant in this story. And we have painted him black and called him a villain for years. For years. I have a new t-shirt that I love. I'm getting really bad at buying t-shirts off Facebook. Anybody else doing that? Judas, stop. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's where I'm getting all my t-shirts. So there's a t-shirt that says no mud, no lotus, which is a saying from Thich Nhat Hanh. And as I've been wearing it around, mostly to my Pilates class, but I've been wearing it around town a little bit, and everybody who sees it is like, oh, cute t-shirt. What does it mean? Looking at me funny, like, what does that mean? Oh. And so I find I have to explain it a lot, and the whole idea of it is you can't have the beauty of the lotus flower without the mud because it grows in the mud. And so we can't have, because we have incarnated in this life, we've incarnated into these bodies that seem separate. We are part of the unity of being. We are part of that essence and presence of God. Everything that is has been created out of this spirit of life that is God. You can call it God, the universe, love, whatever, the force, whatever you want to call it. But there's this essence that we are all part of. And we have come into this life to feel separate and to remember the truth that we are still united, even though we feel like separate beings. And so, I don't know why I was doing that. Oh, there I am. Okay, so I remember why we were doing that. So, because we have done that, we have put ourselves into this place of good and bad, of comfortable and discomfort, of what we like and what we don't like. And when we go into that place of duality, we only recognize things from that place. It's either black or white, it's good or bad. But nothing is like that, because spiritually, everything is good. Everything that happens to us is good, and it's not easy for me to say that. And you'll see that I've experienced some of this. That even those very painful, difficult situations all bring us to a new place of understanding if you let it. This is a powerful path, and each of us walks it in our lives. And there's many different kinds of betrayals that we may experience. Maybe it's a coworker who takes credit for something you've created. Maybe it's a lover who is not feeling the comfort and steps out of the relationship. Maybe it's your body that betrays you with illness. Maybe it's even an idea that God has betrayed you. Maybe it's a parent who couldn't love you the way that you needed them to love you. Whatever it is, we each have experienced them. And not only have we experienced being betrayed, but we've all been Judas at one moment or another. There are times when we, or Simon Peter, that we put ourselves first, our safety, our comfort, because of our fear of change, because of our fear of persecution, because of our fear of judgment. We've taken the path of least resistance, I call it, the comfortable way, instead of stepping forward for what we know to be right. Is it easy or is it right? I think we are all being called in this world at this time to stand up for what we believe to be right, that we are a channel for that. And we can only do that when we realize that it's not just us, that we are not just the individualized being small being that you think you are. You are backed by an infinite creative force of life. And when we realize that, we can stand up to anything. We can break free of any sense of limitation, of any fear, of any doubt. And we can transcend the experience of being betrayed. Now, I don't want to say that we don't feel it, because we do. Like I said, being betrayed is someone that we trust, someone that we love, and it stings. Oh my goodness, it stings when we're betrayed by someone that we love. But you know what? The truth is, it is there for you. It is there for you to see clearly. It is there for you to wake up to some new understanding about yourself and about life itself. And you are supported completely in the unfoldment of this. And so it is bringing you to that place of rising. It is bringing you to that place of rebirth, of knowing truly who you are. And sometimes we would never get there without the pain. I often say that life brings us messages if we let it. It brings us messages if we let it. So often we are experiencing something, we're in the flow of our lives, and maybe there's a little whisper in the back of our head that something might not be right, but we ignore it, right? Because blowing up our life just because there's a little whisper is pretty scary to do. But maybe we know really that there's something that's not right and it's persistent, and what we do is we put it in the back. No, I'm not listening to that. No, I'm not. But what happens then is life is not going to let you stay small, and life is not going to let you stay limited, and life is not going to let you stay in your small place. Life is going to start to shake things out. And if we listen to it, we move forward. If we don't listen to it, it gets louder, and it gets louder, and it gets louder. And I'm often want to say that then God kind of picks you up by the scruff of the neck and drops you where you need to be, right? And it feels like that sometimes. And sometimes that is precipitated by a betrayal. Again, one of those experiences. But that is what is going to make you move in the direction that your soul is being called to move. We are called to constantly expand, grow, awaken. Our spirits are not stagnant. Your soul, you have not come here to have a sweet little quiet life, I'm sorry to tell you. This is not the vacation lifetime. This is a lifetime of being a presence, of being a gift unto the world. Each one of us is called. Each one of us has a special gift to give. And life is not going to let you not give it. And so if you're not on the track of your freedom, of your expression, of your fulfillment, if you are being the martyr and giving up of yourself so that someone else can be happy, if you are allowing yourself to stay small so someone else can shine, life is not going to let you do it. And if you're not going to listen to the infinite divine that's speaking within you, then something from the outside is going to come and show you that you don't have a choice. And it's going to pick you up by the scruff of the neck and it's going to drop you. And that may look like a betrayal. But the truth is we need to bless those who betray us. We need to thank them because they're waking us up. They're waking us up for us to know that we're stronger than we ever thought we were. It's waking us up to know that there's a strength and a power and a courage that we never realized that we had. And it's a truth of who we are. And it's there for us. You know, Easter is an interesting time for me. A lot of my life has converged upon this experience. And as many of you know, 3 years ago, right at Easter, I started my path of my journey with breast cancer. And some people know and some people don't. Over the last 3 years, I was diagnosed 3 years ago, stage 3 breast cancer. Went through the whole thing. Everybody who was here walked through it with me. Thank you for that. And then it spread, it metastasized, it became stage 4 breast cancer, which is scarier. And I had a couple of recurrences. And it's funny because through the whole thing, people would ask me, they would ask me, well, what are you learning from it? Or what do you think this is about? Why'd you call this into your being, And it was really funny as a religious science minister to have that question posed to me, because I don't ask it. I never ask that of somebody. Yes, we do create our experience. Yes, on some level we are responsible for everything we have. But I never ask someone, why'd you do that? And so, but I ask myself, I asked myself this, what the heck? And it sounds more like that. What the heck were you thinking? You know, how'd you call this in? I ate kale every day. You know, I was healthy. I thought. I worked out, you know, I did good stuff. And I meditate every day, and I'm spiritual, and I get cancer. Wait a minute, hold on, this is ridiculous, you know. And there were times when, and I said through the whole entire experience that I didn't have any wisdom over it yet, because I was in the middle of it. And I was frustrated because I was like, okay, well, maybe this is happening for me to write a book and to be wise and to understand things more. And I kept trying to wrap it up in a little bow, you know, and put it behind me. But every time I tried to do that, it came back again. And I was like, oh yeah, no, that's not working for me. So I let it go. And one day I was hiking, I was walking at our preserve in Fallbrook, and I was walking and I was mad. It was one of those times that I was just so mad about it. I get frustrated, I'm human too. And I get frustrated about it, and I was finally like, I can't say the word, but why? Why me? It came out of my mouth. I actually said it. There was an expletive in front of it, and there was an expletive at the end of it, so you can put it in your head there. Why me? You know? And to actually hear it come out of my mouth, I started to laugh because I know better than to ask that question. But the answer came so clear, it was as if I heard a voice. It said, why not you? Why not you? It's your path. It's nobody else's path. Nobody else can explain why it happened to you, and nobody else can make it better for you. You have to walk the path. Katherine is what it said. And that was it. I was like, okay, fine, here we go. And so I walked the path of it, and I just kind of knew that at some point something would come to me. And this week I went in, I threw my back out last week, and so this week I went in for a massage. And my massage therapist is also walking the path of breast cancer. And she has a different kind of experience than I have, and hers is actually much worse than mine. And so we were chatting during the massage about it, and I said to her, how are you doing? How are you doing with this? Because I'm getting tired of handling it. How are you doing? She said, I am so grateful that this happened to me. And I said, you are? And she said, you know what? She said, I do not take anything for granted at all. She said, every day I am fully alive. She said, every day I'm grateful to be able to get up, to have this life. And she said, she's in pain, she's got discomfort, she's got difficulty. And she said, even though I have this lump on my neck, and even though I have this experience, I get to breathe every minute. I get to know that this life is a gift for me, and I'm living like I've never lived before. And that was it. I felt like she was the mouthpiece for what was trying to come out of me. And I hugged her and cried. It was so sweet. I got up off the table, there I am in my sheet. You know? And so I'm so grateful to say that I have a clean scan, and I'm standing here cancer-free right now. But knowing that this is a journey and that this is a path, and I'm on a 3-month cycle, and who knows what's coming. But I don't need to know what's coming, because I know that that power and that presence that has guided me through what felt like a betrayal of my body to me, what felt like a betrayal of God to my ministry, of God to my life. I felt like God betrayed my family. I felt like everything was a betrayal of this, you know. And what I know now that it's not a betrayal. It's not a betrayal. It's a doorway to wake me up deeper to the consciousness of knowing that life is a gift. That this life is a gift. And we are the ones that hold ourselves down, and we are the ones that hold ourselves back, and we are the only ones who are going to be able to break ourselves free from it. And so this Easter, what I want for us is to rise into that knowing that we are empowered to handle anything that comes down the pike. That we are powerful enough to realize that this life is a gift for each and every one of us. And these challenges that come on our roads, the betrayals, the difficulties, the challenges, whatever that looks like for you, it's your pathway to your freedom. It's not something to go around. You can't go under it, you can't go over it. That little kid's story, you can't go under it, can't go around it, can't go over it. You gotta go through it. We have to go through it to realize the gift of it. And only when we're standing in the middle of that of that experience, when we're standing in the middle and claiming the truth of who we are, do we get to step forward into that consciousness that there's something greater, into that place of freedom. And all of a sudden those bonds just simply fall off our wrists and they fall off our feet, and we step forward fully and freely. We are called to live life. We are called to be the divine light shining forth. And as we do that, as we embrace it, as we allow it, as we surrender to this divine path, life guides us to a place of freedom, of joy, and of love. And so this month, our theme for the month of April is choosing joy. And I was very specific. We are choosing joy. Joy is the natural state of our being. Freedom is the natural state of our being. But we have to choose it. If we don't choose it, we experience the opposite. We think the opposite is the truth. We think limitation is true, who we are. We think that sorrow is who we are. We think that challenge is who we are, and that's just false. So this month we are going to come together and we are going to rise out of anything that holds us back. We're going to rise from anything that keeps us small, and we are going to step into that full life of joy as nature is bursting forth joyfully all around us, as the light is shining, the warmth is coming back. We are here to live fully, freely, as that divine emanation and the divine light we are. Are you in for that? Woo! Me too, and so it is.